Oh, what does it say? Slain largemouth
Bass.
bass. Oh,
Yeah, I've been slaying them lately.
have you?
Yeah,
What's your catch?
this morning. Well, so I just started fishing probably 2 months ago, and I've caught roughly like 30 largemouth bass at this point, and a
Wow.
couple of big pickerel. And this morning, though, I put a video out. I have a GoPro, and I put a video out of me losing 2 fish in a row, and it's like you can hear the disappointment in my voice. And I put like this sad music in the background, so it's like
Oh,
just the sound of futility.
oh my
I'm
goodness.
like, again?
That's so funny. You're almost a professional at this point. 30 fish.
Yeah, it's been really fun, man.
Oh
It's
my
been really
gosh.
fun. There's like a little reservoir right near my house. Not a very big one, maybe like, I don't know, 4 acres, maybe a little bit more. And it doesn't get fished as heavily as a lot of people think it does. And so there's a lot of fish in there.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah,
Very nice. Is it starting to get cold up there?
it is. Yeah. So I actually just bought some gloves that I can put on so I can be out there freezing.
Yeah. Good times. Good times. All right. Welcome to Reformed Jellicle, where the Reformed and evangelicals meet. My co-host
Just,
is
just
AD
reformed
Robles.
now, man.
Just Reformed, I know.
It's just reformed now.
Presbyterians and Baptist meet.
There you go.
Post-mill, pre-mill people meet.
In a few months, maybe we'll be Presbyterians too. You know, who knows? Everyone's Presbyterian now. That's what I
Too
heard.
soon, AD. Too soon. But I think we're just proof that you don't have to agree on everything to
No.
share a screen, get along, you know?
Listen, it's funny because, you know, a lot of people, that's the criticism of guys like me. It's like, well, it's just everyone who disagrees with you is a heretic. Well, you know, obviously not.
Right. Yeah. Hence the show.
Let's not be stupid.
Yeah, I was talking with Gabe the other day about all of this, and he went back to the fence analogy that we've talked about several times. Because I don't even want to be defined as a Baptist or Presbyterian anymore. I just want to be a Christian. And he's like, it's good to have fences because that develops relationships. And I thought about that. I'm like, you know, you could be right, but I don't know. I don't know yet.
You're just like, you know, you're just enjoying your freedom right now, you know?
Oh,
So
I'm just enjoying my
my-
freedom in Christ. I might go get a vaccine. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have so much freedom. I don't know. That John Piper article is out of control, man.
It was
I'm so
brutal,
glad you did a
man.
show on that.
Yeah, you know, when I read it, I was expecting it to be stupid, like you know, we can go to the mall again or something stupid like that. And if it was like that, I probably wouldn't have done a video.
Yeah, typical Piper. I mean,
Who cares, right? It's just stupid, you know, takes from Big Eva.
Mhm.
But when I read it, I realized what he was doing. A lot of people criticize me, like behind the scenes, like, you don't know what his heart is, Adam. Like, okay, fine, I don't know what his heart is, but it's so upside down that it has to be subversive. It has to be intentional. It was the worst, in my opinion. It was the worst case scenario for a Christian leader's position to actually be.
Yeah. But John Piper has a theology of surrender, is how I put it before.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he doesn't want to protect his wife if she's getting
right.
assaulted. You're not going to fight back against the government overreach. I mean, it's just seriously, it's like he's being consistent, but he has just poor theology or poor application of theology, perhaps.
Yeah, and so it's like, you have the freedom to just surrender. It's like, yeah, sure. Okay, fine. Granted. But the thing is, you also have the freedom to actually defend your household.
Right.
So let's stop pretending like you're taking the whole, and that's the thing. He's like taking the holy pious route, and really he's just taking the wimpy route.
Yeah, exactly right. No, like thinking back in church history, all the martyrs, but maybe even specifically those in the Bible, the apostles like Peter being crucified upside down. I've always read it, and probably incorrectly, where they just kind of willingly got arrested and willingly went to the cross and got stoned and crucified. I don't know if that's true, though. It never says anywhere in the Bible they just surrendered or gave up. But maybe that's just because we have been raised in this evangelical lens where we just assume they surrendered.
I think,
that's not the case.
I wonder about that myself. I think we just assume it because Christ did, of course. Christ surrendered. He kept his mouth quiet. Like he didn't push back too often. You know, he said a few things, but very little. But he had a specific mission, right? And he knew what his mission was, and he was going to do what he had to do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what God the Father had, you know, commanded him to do. So he's going to do it.
Right.
And so there could be that could be a route for people, right? But also there's plenty of Christian soldiers. There's plenty of Christian, husbands that'll actually defend their wives, and that's totally fine. And you have the freedom, if somebody comes into your house and threatens your children or your wife, to just completely just go medieval on them and start. And you're
love
a
your
thug.
family.
We're gonna go thug. You're gonna thug. We're gonna be a thug now. You know what I mean? There's this great Cypress Hill song where in one of the lines is about like it's a song called "How I Could Just Kill a Man." And he's like, well, so many people like act like you wouldn't do it, but guess what? If somebody came into your house, what would you do? And he basically I think you'll act like a thug. That's what I think.
Yeah, exactly right.
So
you're totally
like,
dating us, by the way, Cypress Hill.
How I Could Just Kill a Man. Cypress Hill. This is a weird little tidbit about AD. For some reason, Cypress Hill was the opening act for like 20 shows that I went to when I was a kid. I never went to a Cypress Hill concert, but I've seen Cypress Hill live like 20 times.
Yeah, that's funny. That's absolutely funny. And thinking about this, though, going back to Jesus, he only surrendered once. Like, how many times did he not surrender and not give in to the crowds? Like, he evaded, he withdrew, he did a whole bunch of other things that didn't include surrendering.
And let's not forget that when he returns, he's going to be cracking skulls.
That's true.
Let's not forget that part. He's the Lord of hosts, and he's going to come and he's going to slay the wicked, and it's going to be brutal. And the thing is, so we can't have an imbalanced Christ, right? We got to have all of Christ.
Yeah, definitely. Mark says, well, I think an argument can be made that John Piper is the most influential living Calvinist. He very well might be.
Yeah.
Positive influence, though? I don't know about that. Yeah. But he's probably definitely the most influential.
Well, I would gladly grant that. I definitely think so many people introduced to Calvinism through John Piper. So many. Mm-hmm. So at least in modern times, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, someone who was never or wasn't a Calvinist until about a year and a half ago, I love John Piper. I listened.
Sure.
I thought he said such profound things. Again, I think he says such complicated things in simple ways of theology that even to this day, I think he does well. It's when he applies theology, he gets into so much trouble. So much trouble.
Yeah, and I think, he's one of these big minds that tries to be too cute sometimes. A lot of people were talking about, well, you should have known this was going to happen ever since he did the Christian hedonism thing. That's subversive too. I agree. That is subversive when you really think about it. Christian hedonism, what the heck is that supposed to mean? But that book is pretty good. It's a decent book, but did you really need to do the subversive thing? So I get it. A lot of people were onto Piper a lot longer before I was, and I'm not saying that you were wrong back then. You probably were right. I'm just saying he influenced me in many ways, and I think some of them positive. And hopefully I saw through a lot of the nonsense. Now, if you see any Piper stuff in me that's objectionable, feel free to call me out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Need to get rid of it. If you hear me ever saying something like the city brings things to the gospel, like the New York guy or something like that, Please call me out. Please. I don't want to sound like a Keller or a Piper any longer. But going back, so I want to go back to this fences thing because I've been thinking about this a lot. And obviously it's a current issue that we've been dealing with separation and division and different perspectives. I think the fence analogy is not necessarily wrong, but incorrect. It's not so much that I think we should consider ourselves as the same neighbors or that we don't have differences, but I don't like the context I don't like the analogy of neighbors with a fence dividing us. I think we should stick to how the Bible defines it as the body of Christ, where I think it is good to be honest where we're at and define what we are, if we're a leg or an arm, and not try to pretend we're something else, but to remember that we are a working image of Christ coming together, that there is a ministry of reconciliation that we need to show to the world and mostly to ourselves. And so the idea of neighbors with fences is a little too divisive for me and doesn't really jive with what Christ considers the body of Christ, right?
You're just a big softy, man. I like that. You're just like a cuddly little soft teddy bear.
I'm getting the gray hairs, man. I got to get soft.
Right. I see a few more grays in there, man. Yeah. So that's why you're saying stuff like that. It's very nice. That's very nice. Well, listen, I kind of like the fence thing, but I see what you're saying. I like why not just use what the Bible says?
Right. Yeah.
There you go.
And I get the fence thing. I get it that we have our different, confessions and we have our different positions and all that stuff. But we're still one body of Christ. We may go to different churches and have different fellowships. That's totally cool. I get it. We need that diversity, but still, ultimately, we are the body of Christ. And sometimes we forget that and it's too tribal within the umbrella of the church.
I think that the fences thing where everyone's defining everything so carefully, there's members of the body that's what they're good for. Like they're good for that kind of thing. They get in their, study rooms and they write their little blog posts, against each other's positions and stuff like that. And we need that. I'm not saying we don't need that, but I think if I'm understanding you, Matt, like, at the end of the day, when we're facing our lives and we're in the public square and we're doing what we got to do, we're engaging in commerce, whatever, like we're just Christians, right? And so, yes, our theology works itself out in what we do. Of course, nobody denies that. But at the end of the day, we're Christians, right? And so the fences, they need to be built, but probably in the academics, with all the nerds.
Yeah, absolutely. Because for let me say it this way. If I'm a Baptist and God calls me to bear one another's burdens,
sure,
and to love my neighbor, that does not only apply to my fellow Baptist. It applies just as much to the Presbyterians on the other side of the fence, different part of the body, whatever it is. If you're a Presbyterian and you're supposed to bear each other's burdens and love one another, that doesn't mean just to your Presbyterian local church. It is just as important and truthful and a command to Baptist. You know what I'm saying?
I do know what you're saying. So it's like, and here's another good, kind of practical thing for us right now. So, when somebody gets their church shut down by the state because they're not, listening to the COVID mandate, like we don't necessarily have to go check their doctrinal statement before we come to their defense.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Like you're naming the name of Christ here. And, the reality is that you should be able to do that. Now, obviously there's going to be some limits there. So like if they're actually a church of Satan, okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
We're talking about actual Christians. Yeah.
We're right. So like, you don't have to check the doctrine before you say, yeah, that's ridiculous that the state just did that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And let's help. Let's go around them. Let's like, yeah. Cause I think I see what you're saying. And I like that. I like that. So maybe I'm a softie too.
Oh, look at that. Look at that. The softie show. That's what we are. So I really want to get kicked off of YouTube today. We have 2 strikes. The third one will kick us off. I totally thought our last show, which was a couple weeks ago, was going to kick us off because
listen, my presence just saves us every time.
It really is. It's the minority privilege.
It has to be minority privilege. Think about this. I was just listening to John Harris, and he was talking about vaccines and how they don't work and how you probably shouldn't get it if you don't think it works. Like, why would you do that? And like all that kind of stuff. And he was like, well, I got to censor myself. I got to say cookies or jab or bang, bang. And like, more power to you, John. You can censor yourself if you want. But I've never, ever, not even once, used a euphemism for vaccine or COVID. COVID's not a big deal. Obviously, I've said that many times. Vaccines, I'm never going to get it. And, if you don't think it works, don't be peer pressured into getting it because that's stupid. Like stuff like that. And it has to be minority privilege. They have to have an algorithm that senses the skin color. But I look pretty white here. I don't know.
But it looks pretty dark in the shadows. So I think that's, maybe they think you're half black, half Puerto Rican or something.
They might think that. I don't know. I really do think that. Listen, I have not a single strike, Matt. Not one.
That's crazy.
People are looking at me side-eyed like, are you for real? Like, you might be part of this.
Yeah, you're a Fed. You're totally an informant. I'm just waiting for you to say, let's go to the Capitol again.
Yeah. Hey, we got to go.
We gotta go. Did you see what I labeled our last show? I said our last YouTube show. So we posted it after we live streamed and I changed the title and said, this is not medical misinformation. And it still didn't get kicked off. It still didn't get kicked off. I don't know,
man. That's so crazy. There's got to be an algorithm that senses skin color. It has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we got a super chat from Nathaniel. Thank you. Let's
Yeah.
read this. 80. So you're saying there's some validity to Lightheart's Reformed Catholicity? How do you say it? Catholicity? Even if you're
Listen,
not.
I don't know the details of what Lightheart said about that, but I do actually think that there's a certain amount of Catholicity that we should embrace. And small c, like there's a universal church out there, and we need to have a bigger tent than sometimes we want to.
Yeah.
Now, again, I've got very narrow theological beliefs, like very particular. And I think that's one reason I'll never have a huge following, because every now and then I'll say something like, wait a minute, you're one of those, but that's cool. I do think that there's some validity to that idea. I do.
And my position, just to clarify, is not saying that AD needs to change his narrow theological perspectives.
Of course.
Obviously. And in fact, I think it's beneficial to have fellowship with people who have contrary, narrow theological positions, because how that plays out practically is very different in some ways. And you iron sharpens iron, you edify, you build each other up that way. You don't build each other up echo chambering each other and living the exact same lives. You have counterpoints, you have counter examples, and then you can take what is good from those and become a better Christian and a better light to the world. And we miss that so much by siloing off and being tribal. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate the money.
Here's what I mean, though, Jamie. That's a good point. He says, how narrow? He literally said we shouldn't have pianos in corporate worship. I did say that. But listen.
Worst take ever. Don't forget that part.
But listen, this is what I mean, though, right? So even if I'm not so sure that we should have any musical instruments at church, and I'm also not so sure that, women should be giving announcements at church and stuff like that, like, I go to a church that has a piano and I'm fine, and I sing the songs, and everything's fine.
Yeah.
And sometimes the lady will give announcements, and I don't like that. But I'm fine. We're all fine here.
I won't submit to the announcements.
Here's what I think. Like if you can go to a church, and I go to a Baptist church, right?
Yeah.
If you can go to a church that doesn't believe a lot of the things that you believe, right? But they believe in Christ, right? And they have some spine, and they believe in a Christ that actually is active in the world and actually changes what you do in the world, like a real Christ, if you can go to that church and not grumble every time you leave, and then your kids see you saying, oh, the pastor said this, and I just don't agree with that. Like, if you can, if as long as you're not in that state where you're like constantly, and maybe if you are like that, you should probably check yourself. Then knock yourself out, man. You can be at a church that you don't agree with theologically.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's some good people at my church, and there's some people that have some wacky beliefs, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
But
I've had
I love them,
wacky
and they
beliefs
love
in
Christ.
my past. I mean, I've been one of those people. I'd look at them like,
and
oh.
Here's the thing: like they're gonna love me like themselves. They're gonna, if I ever needed them, they would get my back. I've got farmers in my church, and if I needed food, I couldn't feed my family. Like, I know they would give me whatever I needed, and they're not. They probably hate Calvinism, stuff like but they love Christ, and so they love Christ's people. That's the church you got to find. You can't necessarily. It's such slim pickings out there that, like, if you only want to go to a church that meets your doctrinal standards to a T, it's going to be tough on you, man. It is.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not asking anyone to change their theology unless they're convinced of otherwise, or the Bible straight up contradicts it. But how much of the Christian life is really far more practical, everyday things? I can love anyone in my church without discussing theology with them once, and I'm still blessing them and working as the body of Christ. I feel like so much of what God has called us to do, we don't do. We're too focused on the theology of it all. But so much of it is very practical living, and we just miss out on that, man. We miss out on that.
You see in the New Testament, like when Christ writes the letters to the 7 churches and stuff like that, and when Paul's evaluating the churches and stuff like that, it's, I'm not going to say it's every single time, but most of the criticisms are what they're doing, like the sins that they're doing, not, well, you didn't believe this in the right way. You didn't actually use the right term here. Like, and I'm not saying that's not important. Again,
right.
Different members of the body need to hash that stuff out, and it works itself out in your life. I'm not saying it doesn't affect your theology, affects what you do. I get it.
100%.
But if you don't have every I or T dotted on your theology, but you do love the Lord, you do obey what he says, you do reject sin in your life, like you're warring against it, you're in a good spot, man.
Yeah.
You're in a
Amen
good
to
spot. That's the stuff you need to focus on. And your theology can work itself out, and we're gonna work that stuff out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking also, because we have been thinking a lot about the Presby Baptist thing lately. My
Why?
ideal church
I was
situation.
kidding.
I've never seen this happen, but I would love this to happen because really the church is made up of families, right? And that might be something I've pulled from the Presbyterians a lot, is for to have communion be something that is administered, but for the head of the household to decide what that looks like. I think that would be really, really cool. I think that'd be a great church to allow Baptists and Presbyterians, as felt led as the head of household, make that decision for their family. Because such a small amount of church services are communion, although I think it should happen a lot more often. I think it should at least be every Sunday. And baptisms happen so frequently. I mean, not so infrequently. It's not an everyday occurrence thing that we could have so much sweet unity together.
Yeah.
If we would just not focus on these issues that we barely do. And when you think about it from a percentage of time at church. So that would be my dream. All right, we got some questions here.
What a heretic.
Oh my goodness. How about a lady worship team leader? I hate it. I don't think it should.
I'm totally against that.
Yeah,
Absolutely against it.
I think if you believe that women shouldn't be in leadership positions and you're okay with a woman worship leader, you completely lack or don't value properly what worship is.
Yep. Yeah, I think so. But again, in the spirit of what we're saying, if you go to a church and they have a woman lead singing, whatever it is, I'm personally against that. I think that's a no-no. I think it's a violation of Scripture.
Yeah.
However, I think I could attend a church where that was going down, depending on the rest of the church. Now, often, what you'll find churches like that, there's a lot of other problems as well.
Yeah.
But I could see, like, that's the kind of thing that I could see past, sort of. That's probably one of the more extreme things that I could see past, depending on the rest of the circumstances.
I agree with you. I've been to a church where they have a women worship leader, and I've been able to worship. I mean, but what I have noticed is the song selections become extremely feminine.
Oh yeah,
feminine. And even when the guys are leading, there's just a trend towards demasculized. Yeah, exactly. There's no psalm singing about trouncing the enemies. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
None of those at the female worship led church.
Yeah, no, I think it affects a lot of things. So you have to watch if you're at a church like that, because I think maybe the question was asked because maybe you're at a church like that. Mm-hmm. So like, and if not, I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm just saying. But if you are, you have to kind of watch the way it affects your family and your children and the way you understand Christ. Because if you're only singing these songs about Christ that are like, oh, sweetly and gentle, that's great. That's fine. You could sing songs like that. But you also need to talk about when he crushes skulls. You know what I mean? And he puts all his enemies under his feet. And when he fills the nations with corpses because he came in judgment over the nations and there's just dead bodies lying everywhere. Like you got to have that part of Christ too. Or again, you have an imbalanced Christ.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, aren't we seeing the fruit of having an imbalanced Christ in our culture for a long time now?
Yes.
So yes, it's very important.
So if you're at a church like that, you just need to be super vigilant. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I would say even advocate for a masculine worship as well.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah, I remember I went to a church and I thought that the songs were, a bit sappy. And I was the entire time I was there, I was advocating for we got to start singing some psalms, and people looked at me like I was crazy.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, but like, what about this one? It's the tune we know. It's good, and people look like a but I'm working to bring people towards what's really true. You know what I mean?
At least you're floating the idea. I mean,
totally.
So what? They're disgusted by the idea of biblical singing.
Shocking. I know.
Shocking.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, absolutely. Dave, a pastor, said that he's not baptizing a baby, and that's fine. You don't need to baptize babies. I think if you are a Presbyterian going to a Baptist church, you can find a Presbyterian pastor to do it. You can find some other way to do it. No one needs to do something against their conscience. Not saying that. There's creative ways to do things that we haven't done them before.
Wyman Taylor Bear. There's a feminization of everything. Speaking of Piper.
That's exactly case in point, though, right? Case in point. Such a feminist take on mostly everything.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah. Mark says, I wholeheartedly believe in baby dedication. That's just pretty much the same thing as infant baptism without water. In my opinion.
AD, could you go to a church that thought dispensationalism? Yes, but yes, with a lot of caveats though, because
Right.
that's the kind of thing that can mess up your kid's mind when they're hearing it. So like, it depends on how crazy they were about it. You know what I mean? Like there's some churches that like they believe in dispensationalism, but like, you know, they're basically teaching the same thing I am, but they just have some every now and then you'll have to hear some, like even my own pastor is so great. I just sent him a text yesterday. I was like, dude, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for being the way you are. You know what I mean? And, you know, cause I'm a big softie.
Yeah.
Anyway. But you know, he said something the other day about baptism that was just totally wrong. Right. Like in my opinion, because he's a Baptist. Right.
Right.
So if he was every Sunday harping on those kinds of issues, I probably couldn't go there. And not because I don't like him, but because I don't want my kids' minds to get messed up about what they need to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
What they need to have.
Sure.
But he doesn't. And I think part of the reason why he's selective about when he brings this up is because, and by the way, there was a baptism that day, so he was teaching on baptism.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense.
Right.
Because he understands there are people there that aren't Baptists. So he's not going to make our kids feel like we're wrong. Although he's not going to shy away from what he thinks is the truth is. He's definitely wrong.
Right.
but I think out of respect, I don't think he would ever go on a 9-month sermon series about how Presbyterians are wrong about baptism. He just wouldn't do it. So it all depends how dispensational every service is.
I love how you conflated dispensationalism and Baptist.
I'm just saying, it's an example. It's just an example.
But you know, if your pastor went on a 6-month series on baptism,
there's other problems there as well.
Yeah, that's again, like there's other problems there as well, right? Doesn't matter what side of the fence you are on that one.
Yeah, and you know, my sons are at the age they heard what my pastor said about baptism. They're not really making all the connections yet, but they're at the age where they could be like, wait a minute, when am I going to get baptized? You know, and when that question comes, like, you know, you got to handle it like an adult, like, you know. As long as you're not going to, you know, undermine the pastor, he's not actually preaching the word of God. Like, if you're going to do that, then you shouldn't be at a church like that.
Yeah, right. Because that's not healthy on a whole.
That's not healthy for
either,
your kids or anybody. You know what I mean? So anyway,
but I think this proves my point. Talking about women worship leaders going to a Baptist church, I went to a Presbyterian church for a year. Is that you have another perspective of what you think the Bible's saying, and you have an obligation to hash that out with people. And when you do, then you either reinforce positions or you change positions. You're discipling each other. And that's what's healthy. That's what we need more of. We need to be able to not only defend our positions, but to elevate our argumentation, to be able to evangelize and to, you know, spread the gospel. And when we don't have those skills, we lack. We lack completely.
Well, absolutely. And the thing is, I think it's healthy for my sons to know that, you know, yes, he's up there and he's preaching. But the thing is, when somebody says that they're preaching, you know, you can't necessarily, you have to check it out in the book. You can't just assume that they're doing it exactly perfect. Like, that's healthy. We're not suspicious of our pastor, but we also check in the book, because actually the standard is the book, not the pastor.
Right. Yep. 100%.
And Mark, you know, you said baptism affects those who can be an elder in the church. It's pretty impactful. I hope you're not thinking we're not saying it's very important. I think baptism is very important. I think that Matt should baptize his kids right now. And I think that the fact that he's not is a mistake. But so it's impactful and it's important. But we're still Christians, and we're going to get each other's back, and we're going to defend each other. I don't have to make sure he's baptized his kids before I get his back and needed help.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though 80s kids are baptized and mine aren't, I'm not going to even go after him like he did me, because I'm a better Christian.
Because I'm a Christian.
No, because I'm a better Christian. I'm a better Christian. But how we raise our kids is important as well. And so when we are treating our children maybe a little differently because of the baptism issue, we can come alongside each other. I could see how my Presbyterian brother is treating their kids. I'm like, oh man, that's really good. I need to steal that and take that.
Yeah,
I need to treat
absolutely.
my kids. I need to hold them
Absolutely.
accountable. And those are just as important as the theology of how you're raising your kids. It's the practical application of it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I've
Yeah,
learned so
absolutely.
much from Presbyterians on how to raise my kids. Foundational things that
Yeah.
I do with my kids, practical things that I never got from any Baptist. Not that I wouldn't have, but I just never did. I got them from Presbyterians. They have helped shape me as a father, and that's critical. I'm forever grateful for that.
Yeah. Dave has a great point here, and it was about my comment. What if my pastor gave a 6-month sermon series on
Yeah.
baptism?
Uh-huh.
And he says, when preaching, guys who always go back to their hobby horses are hard to deal with.
Right.
I attended a church where the pastor was pessimistic pre-meal, and it just kept coming up. I'd rather go to the dentist. That's such a good point. It doesn't even matter what it is. Like
Right.
if you're always like for me, I always talk about the law of God on my channel. But if I was a preacher and I was every passage was about the law of God, even when it wasn't, like that would be a problem. Like I can understand if someone couldn't deal with that.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. That's a great thing about a channel, though. It's not the church. And
Right.
you don't have to listen to it if you don't want to. You're not commanded by God to not forsake the fellowship of 80s.
Can you
channel.
call up Ruslan and let him know that? Like I have a specific topic that I address.
No, he doesn't want to be on a show with me. Remember?
I saw Ruslan. He was reviewing Squid Game,
What?
the ultra violent Netflix show.
No idea.
Yeah, you don't know because you're a Christian.
Yeah, because I'm a better Christian than him.
And me, apparently.
And you. Oh, my goodness.
And
Oh
anyway,
yeah, man. We're stoking some Presbyterian Baptist rivalries in the chat.
yeah,
That's
I
not
see
good.
that. I
Oh, my
realized that the
goodness.
comment I responded to was probably not directed towards me. It's probably directed towards somebody else.
But it makes good show content. It still made good show content.
Here's Mark Garnett. Why is no one talking about Russell Moore being sued? Did you hear about this, Matt?
I have not heard about it, or I
So
probably would have
Mike's-
led with this
Mike Stone is suing Russell Moore,
for stealing
I don't know.
sermons.
defamation of character or something like that, emotional distress, something like that, for like $750,000 because of the leaked letter.
the SBC is not savable. It's not savable at all.
It's just such a train wreck, right?
It's such a train wreck, man.
Now, I'm against the lawsuit just out of principle because I
Right.
think the Bible says you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, it's sinful. It's not just a position. It's sinful to sue another brother.
Oh yeah, sorry if I downplayed it. No,
Yeah,
totally
no,
sinful.
okay.
Yeah, totally sinful. But I'm looking forward to Discovery.
Do you think that'll be made public? Sometimes they're
Probably
not,
not.
right?
Probably not, but I am looking forward to seeing what happens. Even though I think he should withdraw his lawsuit immediately.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still human, and I want to see what happens.
Maybe we can call your favorite crew, the Project Veritas, to get in there and film the deposition or something.
Oh man, that would be something. That'd be something.
I don't know. They did it with their New York Times deposition. That
That would be something.
Yeah.
Wyman Taylor Baird, y'all think Moore is a brother? I personally don't.
no,
But I
think
but I
he's a
don't think
wolf.
it matters in the scope of not suing brothers because he hasn't been excommunicated. And I think that the idea there is that we shouldn't be going to the pagan courts and dragging the name of Christ through the mud with dispute amongst ourselves. And from their perspective, he's a Christian. And also, we shouldn't be setting that example for the brethren as well. To go to the pagans to solve our differences, we should try to solve it amongst ourselves. So I don't think that we should be suing people, and the escape hatch is like we don't think they're Christians. He hasn't denied Christ. He hasn't been excommunicated. I just wouldn't do it. I think that's a sin.
Yeah, I think that's right. I definitely church discipline him and kick him out of the church altogether.
Totally. And this is the problem that we're in right now. The church is in such a sorry state that there is no church discipline.
Right.
So we're going to be in situations where we're like, I want to sue this guy, but like he hasn't been excommunicated. Like, what do I do?
Right.
And I'm not talking about crimes like they killed my mother. Like, of course, of course. We're talking about like, things like this. This is like actually, I think the exact kind of thing that passage is talking about.
Yeah.
So anyway, but as far as I understand the argument about he's not really a Christian. I don't think he's a Christian either. In fact,
I agree.
I don't really say many people are not Christians in my opinion. He's definitely not in my opinion. He's totally apostate. I think he's subversive. I think he's an enemy within the ranks.
Mm-hmm.
Intentional, and he knows what he's doing, and he's doing it very well. But that passage doesn't apply to him. It applies to you, you as the believer, to not do it because we shouldn't be appealing to the pagans to solve our differences.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, go ahead, Matt.
No, I was just going to say that he is definitely an unbeliever, and there are tools that the Bible gives us to deal with that. And there's things that they warned us not to do or told us not to do, not even warned. And so it's just because he's not a believer doesn't mean we get to apply any kind of remedy that we see fit. We need to go to the scriptures and do it correctly. And you and I throw out church discipline like it's obvious, but putting on my evangelical hat again,
It's what a squish.
you say church discipline, and a majority of the church today doesn't even know what we're talking about. Like it's not that they disagree with it. They don't even know what that means because they've never seen it. And that's something that is a big flaw and weak point in the church today, is because we don't know. It needs to be fixed.
Wyman Taylor Bear says, I hear your argument, but I also like giving commies headaches. Yeah, me too. That's why I can't wait to see what happens.
Yeah.
I get it, man. Like maybe that's like a weird desire because like I think he shouldn't have the lawsuit anyway, but like I want to see what the receipts are. That's a weird, maybe borderline sinful desire, but I have to admit the truth. That's how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
Like I feel like he shouldn't have this lawsuit, but since it's out there, I mean, let's get the cards on the table.
Yeah, exactly right. And here's another one. Someone said, so Joe Biden couldn't be sued either. See, if we followed biblical justice, then Joe Biden being sued wouldn't be an issue. He would be killed for capital punishment for the sins that he has created, for the crimes that go against God's law. So it would be a moot point. And so we get in these sticky situations because we don't follow God's law exactly.
What are you going to sue him for? I mean, like, it depends on what he's being sued for. Is it for treason? Well, that's a crime. The state needs to handle that. Like, the state can't determine, okay, well, you're a Christian, so we're not going to apply the law to you. Like, that's not what this is about.
Right.
This is about lawsuits where like there's some kind of like, interpersonal injury, like civil suits, things like that. You know what I mean?
Tattled on me. I'm going to sue you.
Right. Right. So, but Joe Biden's crimes probably stack a mile high for the state to handle, and they should definitely handle them, and we should insist on that. So if Joe Biden did, crimes against the state or, murder or pedophiles, like he most likely, allegedly, who knows, we need to insist on him being investigated in every possible way the state can.
100%.
It's different, though, if you're saying, well, he defamed me, or like, I don't know. I don't know what other example would be, but like, what are you suing him for? That's the question I would ask, Jamie.
He assaulted me, or he stole from me. All of those things that you're trying to seek justice on your behalf when God tells you not to use the pagan courts to do it.
Mark says Russell Moore is reaping what he has sown. I totally agree.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I hope it gets taken to the cleaners, to be honest, because that's what he deserves.
I would love for them to be so taken over the coals that they have no public voice whatsoever ever again. Love it. Yep. Let them. Okay, we have a super chat. Jamie asked earlier, should we church discipline those who put their kids in public school? I'm going to let you answer that one first. I gotcha.
I would say no, but the time for that is quickly approaching.
Good.
So if you disagree with me, then I would have no problem with that, because I do believe that there is a point where that would be a church disciplinable offense. I would say no right now. And I'm very open to being wrong about that.
Yeah, I'm going to be a squish too and say it depends.
Yeah,
it depends.
Okay.
And I'll say it depends like this, because I know of certain people who I've talked to often. They've listened to my podcast, single mom in another country, just as bad public schools.
Sure.
They have no choice. It's that or not be educated because they were working all day.
Sure.
So I would say no to that. But if there are people that have the means and are living a lavish lifestyle and,
Yes.
living off 2 incomes, and they know the damage it's doing to their children.
Yeah.
I think that could be a church discipline thing because they know they're missing the mark on that.
It also depends like on where you are, because in the United States, like not every school board is created equal. Like,
True.
and all of them, you shouldn't go to public school in any state or any district or any, like that should be just no. I'm saying no, you shouldn't do that. That would be stupid to do, in my opinion.
Uh-huh.
So if you're too poor to keep them home because you have to work all the time, then you need to be thinking every spare minute needs to be thinking, what do I need to do to get myself in a situation where financially I can pull my kids out? Because it's very important that I teach my kids the right way. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So number one, if your kids are in public school, you should currently be thinking about every way to get them out.
Yep.
That being said, though, you see what happens. There was a school board in Pennsylvania that like did something kind of cool recently or something like that. Like, they're not all like completely demonic. There are some, and it's an increasing number
Yeah.
that are totally demonic and completely anti-Christian and all. And like, so it kind of just depends on the circumstance, right? It depends on the situation, well, I used to live in New York and I moved out partially because I wouldn't want to raise a family in New York. Not that I would ever send my kids to public school no matter what, but I just didn't want to raise kids there. And so like I was thinking like, okay, I'm going to change my whole life because I want to raise a family and I want to have it to be a successful family. Mm-hmm. And when I live in New York, I'm going to be in the subway and I'm going to see 2 dudes kissing on the subway. And I'm going to have to like figure out how to not ruin my kids seeing 2 dudes kissing on the subway.
Right.
I didn't think it was worth it.
Yeah.
So I uprooted my whole life for that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You need to be doing that kind of thing. If you're in a situation similar, like you're in New York or you're in San Francisco or, you know what I mean? Something like that, some ridiculous nonsense like that. Like, so it just totally depends on where you're at, situations. I think though that the time is quickly coming. And I think it'll be quicker than we think, where basically if you're in public school, like you're going to be teached every kind of demonic doctrine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and be exposed to probably even the practices. Like you see that start to leak out now in certain public schools.
Sure, and even the pedophile stuff, like the kind of books that they display for like gay pride, whatever. I mean, they're pornographic. I mean, they basically want your sons to be getting sodomized as quickly as possible. That's what they want.
Yeah,
that's what they're targeting them to do that. And no, don't tell your parents. I mean, you gotta do fellatio on that guy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
like that's what they want. And so like, it depends on your school district though. Some of them are not doing that stuff, but some are.
But I would say if your school district is doing that, then it is
out.
Church discipline
totally.
really out. Right.
Oh, totally.
So yeah. And let me flip this around a little bit too. I would say the same thing about sending your kid to a private Catholic school. Is it necessarily sinful? No.
I would say no, yeah.
But maybe there are where they're totally like having you pray to Mary,
right,
discipling you into the Catholic doctrines that are obviously
100%.
heresy. Then it
100%.
would be a sin to send to a private Catholic school. So
there was a Catholic school where I used to live in Vermont that was actually really good, and they had to go to mass, which is sinful in my opinion, but it was like the kind of mass that was so innocuous. It was like, yes, they did the sinful things that I think are totally idolatrous, but there was no like Mary statue, things like. And some people would send their kids, evangelicals, would send their kids there, and like I wouldn't do it.
Right.
But I thought to myself, if I had to choose between Vermont public schools or Roman Catholic schools, I would totally choose a Roman Catholic school. Like,
yeah, 100%.
Clearly, because it's
100%.
way better. And I also wouldn't church discipline someone for that. However, if it was one of these weird, like Saint, Guadalupe, Queen of the Universe type Catholic churches, which they exist, horrible. No way.
Yeah.
I'm not having my kid pray to the Queen of the Universe because that person doesn't exist.
Yep, exactly right. And again, so kind of talking about church discipline for those who maybe aren't familiar with it, like church discipline, the core is discipleship. So if I'm wanting to put someone through church discipline, the first step is I'm going to go to the person and talk to them about it and kind of develop, like see where they're at. Maybe they have a legitimate concern or reason they're doing it. Maybe I didn't understand it correctly. And and so I'm working in that relationship one-on-one to point them to Christ and see, okay, are you faithfully discipling your children with this decision? Maybe there is no better choice. Maybe that is the best scenario for them.
That's right.
Like, that's the first part of church discipline. It's not going to pick up some rocks and throwing them in front of the church worship service where the woman's leading worship, right?
Right, right.
It's the relationship first where you're working on it one-on-one. So, and that's coming from someone as well who would never send their kids to public school. I'm just not going to jump on the board and say everyone should start church discipline.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, I think that so there's a lot of there's a tendency, I think, that when somebody posts an article about something ridiculous that the school board is doing in Pennsylvania, Florida, whatever it is, and a lot of times you'll get the response, homeschool your kids. I agree with those responses, but at the same time, like, also we can insist that they stop doing that too, like.
Right.
Like, yes, homeschooling your kids is great. That's a good response. But also the school board should stop teaching this stuff.
Yeah.
Right? We can do both of those things. We can advocate for both of those things. Like, let's not be so like we have to have purity. Everything, every decision has to be so pure. I'm guilty of this because I was mocking today, just yesterday. I'm guilty of this yesterday. I was mocking someone that said a Republican that was like, well, we need to stop defunding. We need to start defunding the Wuhan lab. And I remember I posted, yeah, we're saved. Great. Thanks. That's good though. Like, we can do both. Like, we can actually do everything. Like, we can stop funding the Wuhan lab, and we can also stop all this nonsense as well.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm guilty of this too. I'm preaching to the choir here, but we can do both.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. And so Dave said, Freedom Florida here, still don't put your kids in the government schools. Absolutely. And then I would add to that, and go run for your school board too, and influence the pagans.
See, that would be something. Imagine someone who wanted to defund the schools running for school board.
A Ron Swanson type.
By the way, the pagans do this stuff. Like the tranny, like the gigantic gay tranny that lives in my town, the one that I saw at Walmart. Remember I told you that story?
Yep.
He was famous for running for sheriff of my county as a Republican, satanic, trans, that's what he ran for as a Republican because that's how organized we are here. So anyway, and his whole mission, his whole campaign, we need to defund the police, and I'm running for sheriff.
Yeah.
So we can do that kind of stuff, obviously, as well.
Well, we should do that stuff. It's taking dominion.
Take over the school board, so that you can defund everything.
Yes, absolutely. Take over the IRS to dismantle it. Take over the federal government to limit it. Like, all of those things we need to be thinking about and being strategic.
I'm going to say it. I don't think the pedo-baptism thing is a super big deal for either side. I like it. Yeah. Matt's with you on that one.
No, I think it is a big deal for both sides, and it shouldn't be.
So you agree with him then?
Yeah, it should not be. Oh, speaking of
the satanic church guy, Wyman, he lives in my town. I saw him at Walmart the other day.
Didn't also the new 4-star general health officer tranny come from your place too? The New Hampshire?
I thought that person was from Pennsylvania.
Maybe. I don't know. That's all the same to me. I've never been to the Northeast, so it's all just clumped together.
This guy Wyman, this guy actually does want to defund it. He's an anarchist. He thinks there should be no government at all. So he actually didn't want to have any police. That was his own mission.
Wow. Well, he'd fit right in with Marcus Pittman.
He would.
Yeah. I would rather have an anarchist than a socialist be in charge. I'll tell you that much. Think about it. An anarchist sheriff
actually would be better.
It would be better. What is an anarchist sheriff going to do? They're not going to go around and be, overreaching government. They're going to just be hands off.
So if you have to choose between a satanic anarchist sheriff or a communist sheriff, you choose the satanic anarchist sheriff.
I would throw satanic in front of the communists too. The communists have killed more people than anarchists ever have.
At least the anarchist is being open about being a Satanist.
Yeah.
The communist isn't being open about it.
Yeah, they just hide it and pretend like they hate religion altogether, but you have to worship them. So, yeah, I would take the satanic anarchist all the time. I'm going to label this show Satanic Anarchists Are the Way to Go. That's going to be...
Yeah, Wyman, this guy definitely has read Rothbard. And he actually, if he was actually, in a right mind, like he thinks he's a girl, he's obviously a guy. I saw him. He's like this much higher than me. He's a tall dude. Like he's a big guy. Anyway, if he wasn't like completely out of his mind in that regard, like he actually would be a cool dude. And he believes a lot of right things accidentally because he's read like Rothbard and all that kind of. He's actually got a lot of correct beliefs.
Yeah, he's probably more right than most GOP Republicans.
Shockingly, he is.
Yeah.
And yet he pretends he's a woman and, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly right. Weimar says, have you read Marx's poetry? He loves Satan. I don't need to read his poetry
Of course he loves
to know he loves Satan. Just look at his fruit. The death and destruction and the theft, poverty, everything that Satan loves is the fruit of communism. Of course he loves Satan. Of course. Speaking of defunding governments, let me ask you this, AD. How much? I know we both agree that the Fed is involved in the markets.
Yes.
But what percentage do you think the Fed controls the market?
Honestly, it's impossible to know.
It is.
It is impossible to know. I think that there's a good chance that the Federal Reserve owns a significant portion of equities. Think about their like, dude, this is so crazy. Think about what's being revealed. Like, have you seen the stuff about like the actual like equities that the governors own and like even Powell himself
I know.
owns?
Yeah.
Like okay, so if individually they're involved in the market in big ways,
Uh-huh.
think about how much more the banks that they own that can print unlimited money own.
Right. So
It
have
could
trillions of
be
dollars
it could be a significant amount of the total stocks owned.
Yeah. And the other thing I was thinking about, like, I agree, they own large shares of stocks, I believe, and it's under fictitious names that are sealed that we'll never know about.
Of course.
They're exercising options to short the market and all that stuff. But thinking about how much of our market from the private sector is controlled by algorithms and how easy it would be to crack those algorithms, because they're not like secretive CIA algorithms. They're pretty easy to figure out because they're trying to make money. They're reading market signs to make money. It's not some kind of like, government secret.
Yeah.
What's stopping the Fed from cracking those algorithms and just manipulating all of the companies at once with their actions? They definitely have enough weight with their bond purchases and the cash they have on their balance to manipulate those algorithms.
So
they probably control the whole thing.
So assuming that the Federal Reserve is not a benevolent organization, which I think is a very safe assumption.
Yeah.
How do you move forward in the markets? Like, what do you do? Like, because at any moment they could pull the rug or add more, and they could win either way. Like if they make the right trades, they could pull the rug and still win. You know what I mean? Like, so how do you move forward, Matt? I don't know. It's like, this is insane.
This is probably the best thing you could do is you follow the stock tips by Nancy P on Gab, because Nancy Pelosi has made her fortunes off of insider trading. It's not even a disputed fact. So just copy her stock tips. I think
it's so ridiculous.
What was her last one? Her last one was she bought $7 million worth of options, which are super risky, especially when you're putting down $7 million.
Okay. Stop. Okay. Buying options, you have to be somewhat knowledgeable, somewhat.
Yes.
It's very risky. When you think of Nancy Pelosi, do you think savvy? like, wow, that's a business tycoon right there.
Right.
No.
I'm just trying to guess if she's drunk or not when she's talking. That's
She's
the thing.
Pretty much
about.
drunk every time she talks. Yeah. And she's made millions of dollars.
Yes.
Buying options.
Yes.
How has that happened? Insider trading.
Insider trading.
It's easy to buy options when you have the inside scoop
of regulations of an inner. I think the last one was that it was on Tesla being able to sell in China. And it's not illegal for them because they write the laws for themselves.
it's such a hustle.
It's such a hustle.
This
And you're
is
telling me
why-
the Fed aren't in on that too? Come on.
Of course, the Fed is in on it.
course
They
they're
know
not-
what they're doing.
I can't believe it's coming out that they are making money off the stocks. Like, who's ratting them out? That's what I want to know.
So if we have the information, you got to wonder, why do we have it? Like, who gave it to us and why do we have it?
Yeah, exactly right.
I think they want. I think a lot of the information we get like this is like they want to intentionally demoralize you.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, we're doing whatever we want to do. It doesn't matter, and they want you to think like they're God and they're invincible.
Mhm.
Because like Jerome Powell is obviously involved in insider trading, allegedly,
Uh-huh.
and nothing will happen. He'll be the Fed chair next time as well.
Mhm.
Nothing will happen, and so they want you to know that though. They want you to think that they're not invincible, but they want you to think they're invincible.
Right.
And so
And-
that's why they do this. They let you know what they're up to.
Exactly right. And no matter what you know what we're doing, you're not going to do anything about it.
Right.
Yeah.
So they're trying to demoralize you, but the thing is, you have to reckon they're not invincible. They're not, and you cannot be demoralized by this kind of thing.
Yep. You can't. I did the same thing. Jamie said I bought a put on the S&P. It's been rough. I bought, how many did I buy? I think I bought 30 contracts last month, and it was looking good for a second.
Yeah.
And that's probably why I've been thinking about this a lot. Is everything in the market is telling you the market should be crashed right now, but every time bad news comes out, the market goes up, and that's not because there's rational buying happening.
This is not. It's
No,
not.
not at all.
Listen, I've done something similar. I didn't buy any puts, but I did something similar about the NASDAQ, and that has been rough as well.
Yeah, it's been rough. It's been absolutely rough. Like,
all good,
inflation's
though.
here forever. We were just kidding about it. Oh yeah, stock market goes up. Like, yeah, we have a shipping crisis and the whole world, globalism is crashing. Stock market goes up. Like, come on.
Some
guys.
people say that like the reason that happens is like because the algorithms are programmed to say, okay, you get the bad news, so the Fed's going to do something, and that's like the nice way to think about it, where it's like,
Right.
you know, they're actually going to do something. The algorithms don't get it yet, that they're not going to do anything ever.
Yep.
So it's like a mistake in the algorithm. I don't buy that. I think it's completely nefarious.
Yeah, I
This
agree.
is the whole scam.
Right. Yep. Absolutely right. Because they would have fixed the algorithms by now.
Of course, by now
you don't have
would've
stupid
recog-
algorithms.
right? Because it puts too little hope on the smartness of software engineers and mathematicians. Like they're
Yeah.
way smarter than this
Right.
to have an algorithm that goes down when it should go up.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Like the Chinese just did a supersonic
Right.
global nuclear weapon capable
Right.
into space, but we can't figure out how to make an accurate algorithm.
The mathematicians know when to buy and when to sell, and they're not being fooled
Right.
by
Yeah.
the market signals.
We're being fooled. We're the ones
Yes.
being conned. They keep making their money and we're losing. That's what's happening here. 100%. So what else can we talk about? We have a few more minutes left to get kicked off of YouTube.
I don't know. I mean,
Do your best. Do your best. Let's see if the minority can
I'm
get
a-
us kicked off
I'm a
YouTube.
Christian. I can't do my best. I mean, I
okay.
could definitely get us kicked off.
Trump won
but-
the election in 2020.
Obviously, he did. And January 6th was definitely not an insurrection. That was just a protest.
That was a protest. The insurrection was November 3rd. The jab will kill you.
The jab will, no, the vaccine.
The
will
vaccine,
kill
I'm
you.
sorry. The vaccine will kill you.
Come
The
on,
COVID-19 vaccine will kill you.
Potentially, allegedly.
Allegedly. Allegedly. I don't
Listen, I don't think there's any possible way that we went to the moon. I don't think we did.
know. Mhm.
How do you like that?
There we go. There you go. Here you have it here first. Maybe those algorithms are backwards. Maybe no one knows.
Dude, I talked to a totally reasonable person this weekend, and my wife made a comment about how I don't believe we went to the moon, and he kind of like, I saw him kind of go like this with his beard, you know,
Uh-huh.
and then like later in the day he came to me, he says, "So what are your beliefs about the moon?" And so we had like this sidebar conversation. He was obviously kind of embarrassed that he was talking to me about it,
Mhm.
but he's like, yeah, I don't believe any of the videos either. Like, and he's in the place right now where he's like, I don't think the videos show us going to the moon, but I think maybe we did go.
Uh-huh.
And I know that's like, you have to go, that's a progression.
Right.
Obviously the videos are fake, And then the next progression is, oh yeah, and by the way, there's no space program. But the thing is, what he told me though, you want to know what woke him up to this? Because he looked at the videos again. Like I don't know where you guys believe about the moon. I'm not saying you have to believe like I do, but he said, this whole stuff with the vaccine, the fake information, like I made me wonder what else have they lied to us about. And so this thing is red pilling people like crazy, crazy.
I know, it's so good, so good. All right, guys.
Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
Vaccine is probably very dangerous. Let's see, COVID-19. If you get it, it's really not going to be that big of a deal for the most part, and it might not even really exist. It might just be the flu. Let's see, what else you got? Matt, what else can we get kicked off on? I don't know.
Run out of what? Yeah, YouTube censors us. There's
no such thing as transgenderism. I mean, those are just people that are insane and think that they're girls when they're boys and boys when they're girls. Let's see.
Homosexuality is a judgment on a nation.
It's a sin as well. It's completely abominable. But it's abomination before God. Abomination before God. It is. I'm trying to think of a way to say this in a objectionable way. It's sodomy. I mean, there you go.
Yeah, you're right. Definitely. Well, I think that's a good attempt. Let's see if it gets kicked off. Guys, the reason we're doing that is not only because we have 2 strikes and AD never gets any strikes, but this is going to be our last Reformgelical. And I want to say thank you. No! Thank you for everyone who supported us and watched us, shared the show. Appreciate it. AD is where it's at.
Hold on, Matt. I have the perfect thing to get us kicked off of YouTube.
Okay.
It's okay to be white. You don't have to apologize for it. It's fine. It's acceptable to be white, and you can just live your life and love your white kids. Like, they're so cute, the little white kids. Have you ever seen a white kid?
They're so innocent and pure.
They're so adorable. And then they grow up and they become white adults, and then it's like and they're totally reasonable people. And I actually, I don't know about you, Matt, but when I talk to a white guy, like I have a good time most of the time. Yeah. They make sense, they talk in a language I can understand. That's good too. When someone can talk to you and you understand the language, I like that. And I admire many white people. I mean, there's been a lot of white people that have done amazing things for the world. I mean,
they've really contributed to society.
A lot of contributions. Have you noticed that? I've noticed that.
It might even be the superior culture of our time, the Western white culture.
Whoa, Matt, whoa! I gotta get out of here.
So we're bringing on Andrew Torba next. Talk about the Jew hatred.
I do like white people, though. Listen. I love you guys. I do.
Yeah, I love us too. It's really great. Why is the show ending? Honestly, because I have so much to do and I need to be fair to my family and love them, and it's just taking too much time up at night. And AD puts out great content. There's so much great content out there. This is just the thing that I prayed about and decided that I needed to step down. But AD is still going to be there. Like, what? Are you still doing 2 videos a day?
No, so I've actually been slacking because I got COVID, allegedly. Mm-hmm. I got COVID.
Allegedly, if it exists.
And as you can see, I'm totally fine. But anyway, so I've been kind of slacking, but yeah, I've been doing like a video a day the last week or so.
Okay.
And I don't know, but I may do a live show on Thursday nights. We'll see.
Oh, there you go.
And I've already told Matt that I reserve the right to call him in if I need backup. Yes. And he agreed occasionally to do it.
Occasionally. I will happy to do that. One thing I want to hear you talk about, and I don't know if you brought this up to me or not, but noticing that there are no more white people on commercials. Was that you that told me about that?
Dude, I did a video about that.
Did you do a video on that? Maybe that's what it was. But I'm watching every single video. There's no more white people.
It's over, man. Dude, listen to this, Matt. I know we're over time, but you need to hear this. So me and my brother, he's also Puerto Rican, as you might imagine. We have the same parents.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So anyway,
put that together.
we were just I was on Bass Pro Shops, and I just made a comment off the cuff, like, why is the main page 2 women hunting? Like, that's just so rare.
Yeah, right.
I know some women hunt, but usually they do it with their husbands, or their boyfriends or their sons, whatever. But like, this was 2 women hunting. Like, that's just so rare. There's probably very few hunting parties that involve 2 women only.
I want to see them dress a deer. Drag that back.
right. So he goes, oh, dude, you have no idea. And so he started taking me to other websites and stuff. So we went to Champ Sports, and Champ Sports, the main page is just all black people. Number one, a couple of white people, but we noticed that the pictures only showed half of the white person's face, like it would cut it off. And then we went through, we clicked on the men's section, which was represented by a big black man. And it was uncanny, Matt. All the models were either black, Asian, or Hispanic. There were some white models, but every one up until page 20 had half of their face cut off.
Wow.
They were white. You could just only see their bottom.
And you know that's purposeful. That is not an accident at all.
Of course.
That is intentional.
I thought when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's weird. That's probably an accident. And then like we went through 20 pages and then we found a white face, and this guy could have been Asian as well. So he's borderline.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
sometimes it's hard to tell, when you're judging a book by its cover, sometimes it's hard to tell. So like it was totally intentional.
So
every
crazy.
White person's face was cut off. Every single one, unless you're a woman. White women are allowed, but it's very rare.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Even them have too much privilege. It's so sad.
Right.
I remember 20 years ago growing up, all the shows I watched were black families. Never thought anything about it. Didn't feel like I was being marginalized. Didn't feel intentional. Maybe it was. I doubt it though.
This is an Amazon. It's got some Asians on the cover, and inside it's just all blacks. And then so people were saying, well, okay, well, it's only been whites, like you said. No, it hasn't. Like when I was a kid, there was a ton of blacks in advertisements and stuff too. And by the way, just yesterday, because I've been fishing lately, there was a infomercial that I remember from when I was a kid for the flying lure. And and I remember when I was a kid, I used to fish too. And I was amazed by how this lure would catch fish. I was like, man, I got to get that lure. I fell for the infomercial, obviously. But I was watching it just yesterday from the 90s. This is an infomercial from the 90s. And it was like half black people and half white people. And I know that there's not 50% black people in the country. So even then, it was overrepresented. And I've always been told, no, we've been underrepresented. What are you talking about?
Right, yeah.
And these were like, it wasn't like a stereotypical black person. It was just like a nice, grandfather. It's like I took my grandson fishing and he caught a lot of fish. Like just normal advertisement, Unreal, dude. This is insane. Like it's kind of, I was laughing about it in my video. It's kind of creepy though when you think about it.
It's super creepy because you know what's coming next. It's not
What's
stopping
coming
there.
next, Matt? Because we're gonna get kicked off anyway. So why don't you just tell me?
They're gonna try to genocide us and put us in camps and kill us. They're gonna do Australia to us, basically. I mean, they already put an airport down in those concentration camps. Have you seen that?
Oh yeah, no, I did.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, man. Yeah, they're trying to do that here. There's like weird camp construction sites going on in the country that people are showing pictures of, and it's like there's these big, huge lots being cleared, and there's fencing around it out in the middle of nowhere. That's some in Florida. It's weird. It's weird.
Listen, guys, if you guys get rounded up, let me just say this: if powers that be decide to start rounding up white people, for the first time in my life, I will be glad to identify as white.
For the first time in your life, you're gonna be proud.
Listen, I love being Puerto Rican, and I always introduce myself as Puerto Rican and Latino because that's just how I grew up. I know that the other side considers me white because of my beliefs. And listen, I'll identify as white if it means I can hang out with you guys in the internment camp.
Yeah, there you go. No,
love
I'm not going to the
I
internment camp. I will die before that. I'm not giving up my guns. I'm not going to the camps. Well, on that positive note.
Anyway, no, yeah, there's a genocide coming. But by the way, I'm still going to be on YouTube theoretically. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. Maybe they'll cancel my show just because of this. I don't know.
No,
probably not though, because I think they just like me.
I think they do.
I don't know why.
I think you're a spook. Well, thank you everyone who's been watching
racist,
the show. That's a term for a spy.
That's a term that was used for black people.
Really?
Back
Isn't
in the
that
day,
what they call?
not anymore.
Yeah, they call CIA agents now. That right?
That's what I use the term spook all the time.
Yeah.
But I definitely know that it used to be a racial term.
All right.
Not anymore, though.
We're two white people that are racist. YouTube
allegedly
kick us off, please. Thank you, everyone. And if you do want to reach out to me for whatever reason, you can email me, Matt@howtobuildatent.com. And then otherwise, just go watch AD. It puts out great content. And
Thank you, man.
yeah, thanks everyone for just supporting us. It's been fun.
God bless you
God
guys.
bless.
Well, that was fun, Matt.